Hey there, Pilates lovers. It's Carmen Lanteigne, your host here on Chatter from the Center, a Pilates podcast where we get to practice who we are beyond our reformer. Today on Chatter from the Center is my friend Andrea Maida. Growing up in a small town, Andrea recalls much of her childhood was spent in the backwoods playing by herself, unsupervised. Andrea admits she's always been invested in exploring. As a matter of fact, her favorite book, Harriet the Spy, do you know that one? She thought she was Harriet and always was trying to find a new way to figure something out or find clues along the way. While working in the theater, Andrea felt she needed a routine that would move her body, always looking for something more, some accountability, something. She gave her hand at acro yoga, not her thing. So she then found Pilates. Pilates today, Andrea says, ticks off all the boxes for her. She gets to have her own workout, be responsible for what she's doing, while being in the same community with other like-minded people. Andrea believes that it's her curiosity in life and Pilates, knowing that there's always more, there's the reverse or the combo that has built empathy and some humility into her practice and while working with her students. Now, at 7,000 subscribers on YouTube and rated number 6 in the top 35 Pilates blog websites, Andrea shares how she became the accidental business person we know today as Pilates Andrea, and how, as a graduate of the work and teaching the work with Jade Grimes, skills like patience, consistency, and persistence has kept her at the top of the Pilates game as an educator and Pilates content creator. Join me now as I chat with Andrea and we get to find out who she is, both on and off the reformer. With my friend Andrea Maida, right? Is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like I'm mispronouncing it. And Andrea and I have been, I guess, friends for a while now, but I kind of stumbled onto you back in 2014 when I think it was your blog that caught my eye. And I also have a friend, Samantha Wally, who you know, who when I was looking
very well, yes.
Yeah, I was looking for something next on the agenda in the learning curve of Pilates, and she mentioned the work with Jay, and then she mentioned you. So I quickly globbed onto your blog, and now since your YouTube, I love watching your YouTube videos. But I was wondering though, and the reason my intention sort of also in doing these podcasts is I've gotten to know so many of you guys, my friends, and we watch so many of us on Instagram, and we're so lovely in the movement, but there's actually a person that's breathing, living in the moves on Instagram. And I thought it would be fun to sort of explore that side of the person, because Pilates is a lifestyle. It's made up of people, and we love to move. And we do this thing called Pilates as kind of the thing that moves us. So I'm wondering, Andrea, if you could just help us construct sort of the conversation further for the next little while. If you could bring us back to as you were growing up and who you were, how family was, even before the entity of Pilates Andrea was formed.
Okay, that's a good question. Well, I've always had movement in my life. I've always been someone who had trouble sitting still, and I was really active. I did a lot of dance classes and gymnastics when I was a kid, and I lived in a rural kind of middle of the woods sort of area. And then, I was the last of 3 children after a a long interim between my brother and sister and me. And so I spent a lot of my childhood, running around outside and climbing trees and, just, going in the woods and exploring all of that kind of stuff, as well as dance classes and gymnastics. So movement's really always been a part of my life. And once my formal education ended, my formal education was in college, it was theater. So there was a lot of movement classes. I lived in New York City. I took a lot of yoga classes as my main sort of fitness, let's say, when I was a younger person. I had a terrible job at one point, and I joined a gym. After I quit the job, I joined this gym that had a pool. And so I sort of came to fitness a little bit, but I found it kind of I liked free weights and I liked stretching, but I didn't really have, the gym sort of didn't speak to me in the same way that I found Pilates to speak to me. But when I finished my education, or my college education, and I had a sort of a normal-ish job, and I was trying to get jobs in the theater, I didn't really have my own workout in place. And I, as a young person, I didn't really think I needed one. But I started noticing that I was kind of stiff, and I didn't know why. And so I just think that I missed a lifetime of moving. And maybe if you're not used to movement all through your life, you don't notice its absence, maybe. But I kind of knew that I needed something, and traditional exercise didn't really speak to me. And I was really happy to find Pilates, because I felt like it ticked a lot of the boxes of something that I was looking for to engage me fully, let's say.
Cool. So when you were back in the woods climbing around and all of that, was that on your own, or was that like a solo practice? And has that kind of been your thing, mostly being like solo movement, or are you more inclined to, did you do any kind of team sports in your high school or junior high years?
It's interesting. I feel like, so the running around the woods was pretty much unsupervised, and I just had a lot of energy that needed to, that couldn't be contained in a house. And so my mother would always be like, why don't you go outside and do something? And repeat that last part of your question.
I was wondering, because Pilates for me, myself, it's a lot of on me to move, to motivate myself and stuff. So I was just always curious how people start into Pilates, because it can be quite a solo thing. I was always a person that needed to expend my own energy on my terms, rather than being, I don't know, I once played volleyball, and they had me be the barrel, or the person in the back row that was the smallest person. And I absolutely hated that, because everybody relied on my movement or whatever to build up the team. So I was just curious, when you said you were out and about in the woods, if that's sort of this whole idea of solo movement, or this idea that you're responsible for your own movement, that was just something that was back in your childhood, and it just kind of drew you into Pilates, because really we're responsible for our own movement on that reformer, other than the guiding points from our coaches, right?
Right. Well, I was very invested in just sort of exploring, and kind of there was not a lot to do where I grew up. And so I tried to make it as interesting as possible. I tried to walk all the way to the nearest town at one point, which was only about a 10-minute drive away, but it takes a lot longer to walk there when you're 8. And for a time I did some partner yoga, and that was I had done some Pilates, and then I moved to California, and I sort of explored partner, like acro yoga, for a little while, which was actually really fun, because I enjoyed yoga and I enjoyed the acrobatic nature of it. But it did strike me as suddenly odd that there were like more like others involved in my, workout, which because Pilates was not like that. Although I have to say, before I discovered Pilates, when I was working in the theater, I had a friend who I always I was like, I need like a self practice or I knew I needed like a regular like movement something, but I kind of didn't know where to look for that. And so I had a friend and I asked her if she would like to be like a workout partner and like we could be accountable to each other. And I had no idea what we were going to do, but I thought, oh, we can like say like, I did something like, yay. And she was like, no, I'm not really into that. And I was like, so I thought, okay. But now coming back to like my practice of Pilates now, I feel like that was one of the boxes it ticked because I can work out with people that I don't even know sometimes. And we all know this language of Pilates. We all can work out together, yet on our own. So we have like a community, even though we're working on our own particular practice. So I feel like I was always kind of searching for that kind of an experience. I didn't know it was going to take me to Pilates, but that's really helped with accountability and friends and lots of stuff.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. And at the start of the conversation, you said you had a lot of energy. Those were the exact words from my teachers to my parents. And they enrolled me in gymnastics, something to just expend my energy. And I also want to ask you if it sounds like there's a bit of it within Andrea, there's this challenge that you constantly like to give yourself. Is that kind of something that you always had? Or would you say it's more like there's the challenge, but it's also, this sounds like creativity. It takes a creative mind to think that you're going to walk from your little small town to that other small town without any regards to it might be hot, you might get dehydrated, you're very small and you didn't tell your mom. Is it like just, are you impulsive or are you challenge yourself or is this a creative thing? What is this about?
Well, the footnote to that story is that I had almost made it all the way to the other town and my mother picked me up and I was like, oh, I've almost made it. And she was not very happy because I was small. It probably wasn't a good idea to walk by myself,
Oh, dang. You need a do-over.
But I do like a challenge. And I think that's always, even today when I feel like I know lots more about Pilates than I did when I started, of course. But I feel like Pilates has a way of rewarding your progress with harder things to do, even things that you don't even know are things. And I feel like even to this day, I'll be in Jay's class and he'll say, I'll do something and he'll say, do you know the combo? And I'm like, oh, there's a combo? Of course there's a combo, whatever. So I feel like there's always that little, something else on the horizon that you're working toward. And I think in general, Pilates is a very humbling experience. You always have an idea about what your capability might do, but sometimes the exercise gives you different information. And I think that does a lot of things. I think it keeps you motivated. It certainly allows you to embrace challenge, but it also helps you to have empathy for your students and to not indulge in our special language where we all sound like we're in a cult, but to try to be like a real person and be a communicator,
Right. Oh yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Oh, you know what? It's just, I'm kind of bouncing off I just can still imagine you walking as a little girl and your mom picking you up and you're like, Mom, I just about made it. Can you just come along with me?
Oh, we're almost there. Can we just go? But
secretly
I knew that was not cool.
Oh, that's great. So when you're there's something to be said about how we grew up, and you grew up, as you said, with some time gap between you and your second youngest or the next sibling. And I'm speaking also too from my experience that my upbringing, or I would say characteristics of myself, they sort of show up in how I do Pilates and how I teach and how I go at a project in Pilates. And, words that come to mind. And I'm getting better at sort of shaping them not from a negative perspective, but from a positive. Like, I'm quite the perfectionist. I quite love order. I So I'm just wondering, and I do know that those came from my growing up and things of expectations, perhaps, that were in me that then became part of me. I'm just wondering if you could speak a bit about some of the characteristics of yourself and your personality, and how do those show up in your work? And sometimes if they do show up in a positive way, and also perhaps if they show up in a way that sort of stops or blocks that creativity in Pilates, Andrea. If you could just talk a little bit about that.
This is a great question, a great topic, because I feel like, throughout our lives, we do everything like we do everything. Like, especially if you have Pilates is the first job that I've had where I actually tell people what to do. But before that, I worked as an actor where everyone tells you what to do. And I had sort of other kind of supportive kind of positions in jobs. And I feel like I do like things. I love order. I love a plan. I love knowing where we're going, what the big picture is. Even if I'm working on like this part of the picture, I'd kind of like to know where the whole thing is. And one of my first experiences with Pilates was my little mat class where I couldn't do the roll up. And then one day I saw an instructor across the room do the control balance stepping off. And that was really motivating to me, because I thought, oh, that appeals to my gymnastic background. That looks fun, and it was also like, I probably have to get better at the roll up before they'll let me do that. So there was a lot of process involved. Occasionally, I like to understand things, and I like to make connections and find my way from point A to point B. I feel like in the theater, you learn to look at a script and figure out by what character you say, by what other people say in the play, who your character is and where you're going. And I feel like that skill makes me look at the order of the exercises and just all the remnants we have of Joe's method, so that I can determine what he wanted to do and what he thought we should get out of this exercise. And I have to say, digging into the exercises like that and just always being on the lookout for, I guess, and you work on your body to the point where maybe this doesn't notice the similarity, but suddenly you find yourself in a position and you understand why this exercise is after the other one, or what this has to do with other exercises in the system. So I feel like if you're looking for the greater plan and order, often it will come visit you. And conversely, sometimes I've been in class with Jay. I like to get things right. I like the right answer. And that's not. That's often unsatisfying. That there's not a way that's always the same. And sometimes he'll stand and watch. And then at the end of what it's like the long stretch series, his only comment is, you really have to stop thinking so much in that. So sometimes my ability to want to do it, more is better, right? Sometimes I feel like that I'm imposing on the process versus accepting the process and where I am in the process. And that's things I run into in life too. I try not to worry about things that are in the future that I can't control. I try to do my workout and work on the things that I can control. So
yeah, it's interesting how the idea of what Jay says to us, trust the work. That took me a long time to realize that trusting the work meant that I have to get out of the way and not be so controlling and not look for the right answer. And that in itself was trusting the work. And that has made my life go a lot easier too, outside of the studio, off the reformer. You know, I'm a little bit more at like, okay, it's water off a duck's back. I'm okay. I won't get, you know, my panties in a knot here. So it's so interesting how Pilates develops who we are as a person outside of the studio. It is a lifestyle, you know, it creates a lifestyle for us, and how we think and how we interact, you know, outside of the studio. So I was looking through, you know, I thought, oh, I know Andrea, this will be no problem. And then I start looking at your stuff online, and then it takes me through a rabbit hole, and I'm like, well, she is really a Pilates sensation here.
You're very kind.
So I was looking, and it took me, I was on your Pinterest, and you have many followers, even on Pinterest. It's amazing. So I think you've been very successful and smart about linking your socials through the last, I want to say 6 years. That's kind of seems like where this started as a little mustard seed for you. Would you say that's true? In about 2014, 13, after the work?
Yes, I started my blog during the work, which was 2012. And then kind of that led to a bit of a transformation in my business. And that's sort of when that, like, teaching the work was 2013. And so 2014 was, the post work surge. And I really started more consistently putting videos on my YouTube channel, and my never-ending project of being a consistent social media poster.
Yeah, that does seem to be the trick, doesn't it? Consistency. I think I was looking at one of these, I don't know, it's some random, but it says the top 35 blogs and websites to follow in Pilates, and yours rolls down up into number 6 for your blog.
Oh,
that's quite
okay.
incredible.
Maybe I haven't seen that one, because I saw one where I was number 9.
I know you'll have to update your blog now and put yourself as number 6.
Hey,
number 6. But I noticed that it was how 1 year of training changed my POV. Is that your point of view?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're talking about, this reckoning or this kind of awakening that sort of came about in your Pilates?
Well, yes, there definitely was a point of view shift and a mind cracking open moment. Well, there are many of those, but I can't really say enough about the program, the work, and teaching the work, because I really learned that, you know, I don't know what I don't know. And I knew studying with Jay would be life-changing. I knew I would learn a great deal, but it wasn't really until I was involved in the midst of it that I kind of learned. It far exceeded my expectations about what I would learn. I really learned a whole new way to look at someone I'm teaching. And Jay has a way of, like, you know, turning down the terror alert on like an hour of teaching Pilates. You know, he always says, you know, you're not going to change the world in an hour. And I feel like sometimes, you know, in our first training programs, after all the tests and all the intensity of like that first training program, you are very like on alert, where, you know, you had to see everything that happens, and, you know, in that hour you want to change the world. And I feel like Jay has, you know, tried to infuse us with patience.
Yes.
Which I'm sucky at patience.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about this blog, because, you know, it looks to me that you have like thousands of subscribers to your blog, or I know it on your YouTube channel, and they sort of correlate with one another, and you're very good at tying them to take a person down a rabbit hole to bounce from one of your socials to the other. So great. Good on you for doing that. That's really
thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. So I want to know what, like, I tried to write a blog and then I got very bored with it. And so I want to know really what is your thought process, and where do you draw your inspiration? And because we are ever evolving in our Pilates, in our body and our POV, like you mentioned, do you perhaps sometimes look back at some of those blog posts and rewrite, how they remake movies?
Yes.
It's not like everything I said was a bunch of horse shit. Now this is the new version. But do you ever look back and go, and reframe it and post a new one, but it was really off of the old one?
I have done that a little bit. I probably could do that a little bit more. I've had two experiences. I've seen a blog post from the past where I think, wow, I wrote that. And I relearn shit that I've forgotten. I'm like, oh, look, I knew that one time. And then I also see things where I'm like, oh, let's fix that. But I love the moment where so I find Pilates very moving. I feel like when you feel the truth, it's the truth, man. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to laugh at myself because sometimes I feel like that's how I know if the blog post resonates with me. When I read through it, if I'm suddenly like, oh, that's good, yeah. If I suddenly am like, oh. Or I feel moved by, I don't know. It's sort of interesting because I feel like I started writing a blog. I've always written a journal, even as a young person. So there's a children's book called Harriet the Spy.
Oh yes,
and
yes, I know that
and
one.
So Harriet keeps a journal and she's a detective and everything. And so as a child, I was very interested in that book, and on my treks as I walked to the nearby town, I was looking for a crime. Anyway, so I've always kind of been reprimanded as a kid for too much writing. Stop writing. It's time to listen now. Stop writing. And so I wrote in college. I kept a journal. We even had a class where part of your grade was the journal. And I was like, great. And then I find that what I liked about being an actor was that the words were not my own, and I could speak, I wasn't speaking extemporaneously. And with Pilates, I always felt that I found it challenging to speak, to understand or speak in a cohesive way about points and, techniques of Pilates. And so I felt like writing a blog and the crafting of a little project, a little visual art project, with the ability to edit really helped me to kind of learn things myself, even as I would write the blog post. I find that sometimes when any workout that I do, there's always something, even just one thing that, comes up or is new information that can be inspiring. So I sort of felt like, well, there's no end to how many ideas I'll find to write about. And sometimes I am there's a topic requested, or I feel the need to write about something, and it's a little bit of a scary topic. I feel daunted to write about it. And I always think that that's a good thing to write about, because then I have to figure out there's a question that I have too.
Yeah, that's great. I do hear you about the authenticity coming out in the blog or in the video. I've tried my hand at blog writing, and I've tried a bit of this YouTube, and I will look back and I'm just like, who's that imposter trying to off some information here? But then I will look at something I wrote or something I taped, and I'll go, yeah, I could get behind her on that. And that's when I feel like you were saying the power of the truth. It's very authentic, and it really comes out. And I mean, I just really love your Instagram posts or your blogs where you sort of, you go and you say something and we're like, oh, there's a question mark. She's going to talk about it. And then there's a little talk about it. And then there's the devil's advocate side of it. And then you go on a little journey there. And you do come full circle back to what you're posing for your question or the point of education. So I think not only are you educating people about Pilates, but do you feel that you're bringing them into your world, Andrea? Because when you're doing your YouTube or you're doing your blog, it's a bit one-sided. There's no one across from you in the real time. So how do you, I know you use humor a lot, and you use your love for nerdiness a lot. You just something that you just love. How do you get into the role, or do you just get into it as you go along, as you're writing or as you're doing one of your YouTube videos? Because I was watching, some of your YouTubes, and I'm like, she's talking to me and I'm not even in this video. Like, it's like you're bringing your audience into it without them even being there. I'm sure Joe is just filming you, shaking his head.
Well, thank you so much for that feedback, Carmen, because sometimes I feel like when I start to film for YouTube, I feel like it all flies out and it's all, like I'm in the zone. And other times I just start and I try to say my name and I feel like I'm not saying anything, or I'm like, going on to some sort of tangent that doesn't have to do with the topic at hand. But I really treat, the camera as that person I've been wanting to work out with. And especially if I'm doing like a workout in the YouTube video, I feel like that's part of the camaraderie of working out with someone, is the funny things that happen. And especially, when you're working out and you're trying to talk and you're filming it for YouTube, it's a little bit of a constraint or contrived situation. And often things happen, like, you descend to the mat and you fall a little bit, and that wasn't your intention. And so I kind of feel like that's what we want to see, right? That things are hard for me, even though I'm, in the position of expert, let's say. But some days, your roll up is terrible. Some days you forget to do the short box, and all of our mistakes are valuable. And another reason I started the YouTube channel in particular, because YouTube, while we do, as we gain views and subscribers, we do make some compensation from YouTube. It is not a quick way to make money, but I wanted there to be something that if somebody wanted to learn Pilates and they had a body and they wanted to take care of it, that they could find something that was fun, accurate, not too serious, an actual exercise, not too like highbrow, not too technical, but like a real breathing person that, is, it's exercise. It's not like we're brain surgeons. And it should be fun because the exercises are really hard. So if you can laugh at your attempts to roll up from from lying down, or if you can cheer for yourself because, your neck pull's really bad, but it's the best one you've ever done. So I feel like these are moments to be celebrated, because in an hour, you're going to feel amazing.
Yes, that is true. So looking back at like the 80s and 90s, I know I got my start with the Windsor Pilates videos. And those, as we know, were very much hired movement teachers, or some people that Mari was teaching, and they all had their color coordinated outfits on, and they were on their oval stages, and it was 3 cameras going. So along comes Pilates Andrea's YouTube channel, and that just isn't the case. And I do think that that's what draws your audience. And as you were mentioning, this real person teaching this thing of Joseph Pilates in a real body that does maybe not descend to the floor in such contrology as she would like. I think that's a real attraction. Did you always have that? Like I noticed that from 6 years ago till now, there has been some upgrades in the video, in the quality of sound. So
Yes.
Not that you're striving for the Windsor Pilates tapes, but is there a point where it's enough's enough and this is good enough? Or are you wanting to build this into a place where you have 2 cameras, etc.? How do you see your YouTube channel going?
Well, I'm with my upgraded white space. I really like what the whole aesthetic looks like now.
Yes.
And the other was fine. I feel like when the content is good and you can hear, the sound is acceptable. I feel like that is sort of the main event. If the content is able to be delivered in a clear manner, and it looks clean so that you're not distracted by the environment. One of my goals is that fantastic Pilatesology lighting. I feel like all of my videos Jack, he's a professional.
He's amazing.
But all the videos on Pilatesology, I'm like, look at my skin. It just looks amazing. And I have not achieved that level of lighting in my own videos. So that's still on the table for me. But as long as you can see me, it's perfectly fine.
Perfect.
Yes.
So with your Pilates Andrea, and it used to be called True Pilates, correct? And then,
well, actually,
how did that go?
So my one of my certifications is through Romanis Pilates, and Romanis Pilates, the mothership, let's say, when I went through my training, was called Drago's Gym, because there was a man named Drago who also taught gymnastics in the same space. And I believe it was his space originally that Romana and the Pilates program came into. And then pretty much right around the time of my certification, which was like 2006, they changed the name of that 56th Street studio. To True Pilates New York. And since I was newly certified by them, I asked them if I could, if I could use the phrase True Pilates, but they also had the phrase, all Pilates is not the same. Let me show you the difference. And since I was trained by them, I asked them if I could use that in my promotion. So you may find things that say like True Pilates Solana Beach. And that really was just my being an offshoot of them.
I see.
But I sort of have kept it because I feel like, especially where I live in California, all Pilates is not the same. Come to my studio and you'll have to learn your exercises. And maybe you won't be happy, but you'll.
So
but that's the way.
Yes, of course. We are trying to, as I don't know what word I used to use, classical Pilates. I was quite tied to that word. I'm not so much anymore. I just do this thing in my studio as you do this thing, and we try to keep it close to the source of, our teacher Jay and, some Romana in there.
Yes.
When did this entity now? Did you know that Ken Koresh? We were just talking about that this morning. That he does have this sweet nickname for you. It's not Andrea. It's Pilates Andrea. Could you?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
He
so you
only delivers his corrections with my full URL.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm wondering if it's Pilates Andrea. This is a business. This is an entity. This is.
Yes, there's a story.
Has it
behind
been? Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's not a great story, but it's the story. So when I moved to California, so my Pilates training in Washington D.C., my first training under people who are trained by Ramana, Excel Pilates in D.C. They're awesome.
Mm-hmm.
They have 3 studios now, D.C., Annapolis, and Northern Virginia. But when I was there was 1 studio in D.C. And so when I became certified there, and I was an employee when I worked there. So then when I moved to California, the model here was that everyone rented space in a studio. I was an employee of a gym, but the studio where I worked was, I was an independent contractor. So I was suddenly my own business, even though that was really not my intention. And so I sort of referred to myself as the accidental businesswoman, because I was like, oh, now I have to tell people, I have to book myself. I have to tell people what to pay me. I have to collect money. I have to handle customer service. Oh, okay. When do I get to teach Pilates? So the studio where I was first working in Solana Beach was called Pilates Joe, because the studio owner was also named Joe. And so when I had to form my business, I operated as like on a shoestring for a little while before I was actually like incorporated and had a business license and figured out how to do that kind of stuff. And so that's why if I was like, well, if he's Pilates Joe, maybe I'm Pilates Andrea. so, and I still maintain that if I ever have an actual brick and mortar studio, I will be torn between the 2 names, Corrective X and Control Yourself. And thank you to Nan Young, who named her studio The Control, because I told her that I wanted to call it Control Yourself. And she said, oh, I like that. And then later she came back and she said, you know, in Korean, it sounds weird. And I said, well, in English, it sounds kind of weird as a title too. But
so here we have Pilates Andrea. This is the entity. This is the sensation. And moving forward, what do you see for yourself or for Pilates Andrea? What do you see moving forward, especially coming out of the pandemic? I know a lot of us business owners and studio owners, and I think you're a little bit ahead of the curve. I mean, you've always been in your home, and people have shut down large brick and mortar and have come back to the home. And within the home, it has a place of dignity now, I think. Like, I used to run a studio out of my home, and I was sort of like, I just have this thing I'm doing in my home. But now, after the pandemic, I think it holds a lot of, I don't want to say power, but it is
elevated the home studio.
It's elevated. Yes, it's elevated. It's not bougie, but it's elevated to this place of, you know. So how do you feel about that? Like now, like you've done some upgrades in your studio or in your home. How are you feeling about having that home studio post-pandemic or through the pandemic?
Well, you know, pre-pandemic, I always felt that I liked having my home space because I didn't have the same kind of demand of a commercial space that might lead me to offer services to pay the rent that maybe didn't align with my Pilates sensibilities. And there's nothing wrong with classes that are other modalities, but that wasn't my jam. Like, I didn't want to teach, you know, leveled classes or bar, or I wanted to really keep my focus quite narrow, because I wanted to find more depth in what I was doing. That's kind of been my whole thing since I learned all the 500 exercises. I've been trying to, you know, to get better at that body of work, not really going outside that too much. And I feel like now, through the pandemic, my online offerings and my online business has become the majority of my business now. And I have really only a handful of local people that stayed with me online and that come now in person. And again, I feel like that has galvanized me to be very adamant about the way that I want to teach Pilates, the way that I think is most beneficial to learn Pilates and will make the most of your investment and make the most of your instrument. And the best thing about it, even though I feel like in certain ways, and you're doing it too, and we're trying to change the culture of how Pilates has been taught in the modern era. And I feel like I have to keep reiterating to every inquiry that asks about classes. I say, you're going to do your own workout, and I explain what that is. And then the question still remains, oh, but so is it on the reformer? So I kind of feel like, we're steering the ship away from what is perceived how you should learn Pilates. But I feel like we have on our side, again, the truth, because you will improve and make progress more. It is the most of your investment. It is going to make you learn better. It's not just my, idiosyncrasy of how I want to run my business. So the pandemic has really galvanized me to say, this is what you're going to do. You're going to learn this, and you're going to come and practice it.
Yes,
so
I would
far,
agree.
It's going swimmingly.
Yes, and I would swimmingly. I would
swimmingly
say that has been an evolution for myself too, or also because it's not done that way.
Asset to me, just seeing you and your business doing it. That's been really, spurring me on.
Oh, good. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me and chatting. And I want to ask you, are there any uplifting books, socials, or things outside of your studio that are inspiring you at the moment, Andrea?
Yes. On social media, there are a couple. There are lots of people that I love, but there are a couple people that I don't really know very well. But I follow them, and I always enjoy their commitment to the traditional work, their commitment to their own body and what they can do. And the two people that come to mind are Kira Lamb and Christina Gadar. I'm a big fan of Christina's books, because you can feel that meticulous control and precision, like in every page. I fell in love with her book, the first one I got, because it was a book on some mat exercises and some reformer exercises. And she dedicated a whole 2 pages to how to sit down on the reformer. And I was like, ooh, I love this lady.
That's your girl. That's our people.
And I've never met her, but yes, just people that are in their own practice, bettering themselves, putting up videos. Then they know, and none of us are perfect. Sometimes, it goes well. Other times we find out, like, again, through repetition, through mistakes, that it's what can be improved upon. And there's also a local studio that the owner used to be a client of mine, or sometimes still a client of mine. And she is a traditional studio, Studio Flow Pilates in San Diego. And she has created really a wonderful community of dedicated clients that are just kind of up for anything and very supportive, and just she's really created a lovely learning environment. And I'm not in her studio very often, but I just, even through the social media, like her people are just really interested in taking care of themselves, and just lovely people. But I feel like there's so many people that are doing a great job
There really are. There really are. So if you had 3 exercises to do if you came into the studio, not that and they could change day to day, but like, let's say today, if you walked in the studio, what would be those 3 exercises that you would use for your body?
Well, I am finally discovering the joys and rewards of the foot corrector, and all things that have to do with connecting your extremities and your feet to the rest of you. And so I would say a couple of foot corrector exercises. And I feel also the unsung hero is the 2x4, because even the simple things we do on it are not easy for anyone to do. And if they are, then you should do it on one leg.
I love it. The challenge.
Yeah. And I feel like now all the things that I like, either stayed away from or never got to, like the pedipole or everything that bends to the side, I feel like it's all come full circle. And I've realized that there were, chinks in my foundation that needed shoring up to move forward in some things. It's always good to go back to build up what you're to better what you're doing now.
Yes, it's so true. With time, we evolve, and we even evolve forward, but we evolve backwards to the basics, in our body. It's just so amazing what Pilates can give back, as long as we're willing to listen. And if you were to give some inspiration to the Pilates lovers out in the world, what would it be?
I would say that if you have a large teaching schedule and you are teaching Pilates a lot, not to neglect your own workout. That if you're looking for inspiration or ways to find depth with your students, or why they can't do X, Y, or Z, you're going to find those answers in your own workout and your own practice. And you're going to find your way of speaking about them. I feel like there's often a big emphasis placed on the collection of cues, like what's the best thing to say for this or for that. And I feel like if you invest in your own workout and you have the stimulus of the person in front of you, you're going to speak to your experience, and you're going to see what you see is going to tell you how to communicate with that person, that you can find your own language that's uniquely yours. And, because nobody's going to be, there's a better choice or a different choice, but no one's going to be you. So if that's what they're coming for, we are the messenger of Pilates, but it helps if the messenger is, a good time.
Yes. And so what would your inspiration be to the Pilates lovers who aren't teachers, who are the students that are coming to you? What would you say to them as yourself as a student? What has kept you going? What has kept you getting on that reformer time and time again, doing those same sequence of exercises, whatever it would be?
Yeah, I feel like even though we know, Pilates is good for us, it gives us energy, it gives us, it makes us stand up straight. I feel like maybe I'm a little bit lazy in my workout, but I feel like I continually am reminded just by lying down to begin. And when I finish, I still hours after my workout, I'm wondering why I have so much energy, and I feel where did that come from? I feel like we sort of continually forget how much it's doing for us. And I feel like even if you can just, if you think you don't have time, if you just lie down for 5 minutes, by the time you lie down there, you'll remember that, hey, you do this, you really like it. And maybe you'll stay for 10 minutes.
Yes. That's excellent. That is just really some great words to live by, Andrea. So thank you so much, my friend, for joining me, chatting from the center, the Heart Center, and We learned a lot about you and what moves you, and a lot of what takes you off your reformer and into, life as a lifestyle. Pilates definitely is a lifestyle for you, and we could see that. And so where can we find you, Andrea, if we don't yet follow you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram. I am Pilates Andrea. Just ask Ken. and I am pilatesandrea.com. You can send me a message through my website or reach me in a direct message on Instagram. I do try to answer. You can leave a comment on a YouTube video. I do try to answer all comments. I apologize to any of you who leave me messages on Facebook. I'm not really there very often. And so sometimes I find them like months later and I'm like, oh my God.
Well, now they know where to find you. Thank you so much, my friend. You have an awesome day, and we'll see you the next time when we're in community for our workout.
Yes, I can't wait. That'll be super fun. Thank you so much, Carmen.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you for joining me today here on Chatter from the Center, a Pilates podcast where I have interesting conversations with Pilates enthusiasts like yourself, and how we get to chat that Pilates is much more than a workout. Conversations with my guests continue after our chat and can be found on my Instagram at Align Pilates or in the comments section on YouTube. If you are a Pilates lover and enjoy these chats, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Align Pilates, and click on the notification bell for my next Chatter from the Center guest. Until then, keep moving, and we'll chat next time.